So before I get into the Technicolor psychosexual nightmare that is Pearl, I'm going to take a quick moment to talk about the Hellraiser trailer, because oh my god, I am so excited. I have so much stuff happening in the next few weeks, and I cannot see past October 7th because, god, I just need to see it. It looks so grotesque and beautiful and amazing, and Jamie Clayton's voice as Pinhead is perfection. They're nailing the vibes. There is a bunch of stuff in there from Hellbound. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. Oh my god, I can't wait to talk about that movie with y'all. Anyway, on the note of weird fetishistic gory nightmares, Ty West. So Pearl is written by Ty West and Mia Goth, directed by Ty West, and starring Mia Goth as Pearl. It tells the story of the titular character who was the villain of X. And now we get her backstory in 1918 during the Spanish flu epidemic. And Pearl, not unlike MaXXXine and X, has dreams of leaving her dreary life on the farm with her oppressive mother and paralyzed father to go on the road and be a star because she believes herself to have that it factor. And what follows is a nightmarish Technicolor character study, just giving us the ins and outs of this woman's life and her upbringing and why she is the way she is in X. And it is fascinating and tragic and funny and horrifying, and I loved every second of it. The behind the scenes of this movie are kind of insane because Pearl was a film that no one expected and ended up being filmed back to back with X. And I don't even know the logistics of that, honestly. I don't know if they added extra shooting days or if they planned for extra shooting days to shoot this movie. I don't know. It recycles some of the same cast from X while adding some other people, including the woman who plays the mother, who was the intimacy coordinator on X. And Ty West and Mia Goth made this movie in secret, essentially, and revealed its existence as the post-credits stinger of X. And now, like 6 months later, we get Pearl in theaters. And it's tagged with a teaser for the third film in this trilogy, MaXXXine, with 3 X's, culminating in what might be the coolest horror trilogy in recent memory. So X was a movie that I loved. Ty West, genre film master, essentially the inbred love child of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Boogie Nights, starring Mia Goth twice, Brittany Snow, Owen Campbell, Jenna Ortega, and Kid Cudi, of all people. X is this beautifully, brilliantly crafted, beautifully paced slasher dark comedy from back in March, and I talked about it on the podcast in more detail. You can click the link below. And Ty West essentially created this seedy, southern gothic, drenched in gore and viscera and cum, and featuring some of the most stunning visuals and breathtaking editing and hilarious comedic beats in a slasher film. Set in 1979, at the start of the porno revolution, X is centered on a group of friends who rent a farmhouse from an elderly couple in order to make a more legitimized porno that they can then release and get famous off of. Unfortunately, the older couple who own the farm, particularly Pearl, the elderly woman, are a bit off, and Pearl has some feelings about these young, hot people smanging around her. What X is essentially a pseudo-slasher film. It's the vibes of Texas Chainsaw Massacre with oppressively hot atmosphere and a lot of focus on gore and meat. But what it lacks in cannibalism, it makes up for in comedy and horny old people and gore and an unexpectedly heartfelt message about aging and regret and youth. And there are a ton of brilliant parallels between MaXXXine and Pearl, both of whom are played by Mia Goth. That's right, the old lady is Mia Goth, and she sells it a ton beyond just the prosthetics. This woman is an insane tour de force acting-wise, and she sells these two distinct characters in such a way where they both feel completely unique to each other, but the dual role and the fact that there is something in the eyes that is familiar, it makes it a brilliant twin performance, and the dual role has such thematic significance, and I will get into that as I talk a bit more about Pearl. Pearl's psychotic and regretful at feeling that she's missed the best years of her life and is in a marriage that is essentially sexless now because her husband has a heart condition, and she's seeing all these young, hot, horny people doing the do, and she feels rejected and jealous and like her best years are behind her, and it sends her into a psychotic rage. And she goes on a bit of a murder spree, and it's dark and sad, and we get a very tender emotional scene set to Landslide that is weirdly poignant and deeply emotional and shocking in a film that is centered on people making a porn around murderous old people. MaXXXine has a recurring line of, "I will no longer accept a life I don't deserve," chasing her dream and that the titular X Factor, wanting to be a star. And we later see in Pearl, we see this mirrored almost to a T, although it plays out far differently because Pearl has a very different kind of X Factor. Mia Goth is incredible. Just as much of a talent behind the camera as she is in front of it, having co-written Pearl, which is truly wild. And if X is the love child of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Boogie Nights, Pearl is the love child of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and The Wizard of Oz. Like I said, Ti West is the king of genre filmmaking at this point, and the way he committed to the bit with both X and Pearl is a beautiful thing. They really committed to the Wizard of Oz vibes here. They emulate the stylings of a 30s film immaculately with the choice of credit sequences and the style of editing and the fact that the saturation is boosted to hell and gives the whole thing a Technicolor vibe. Everything's so vibrant here. The reds really get to pop, especially when there's bloody scenes or when Pearl's riding around in her red dress like Miss Gulch. Strong vibes of that. It's great. All of that together with the score by Tyler Bates and Tim Williams, it makes for this wonderful mix of like vaudeville and synth, and it hammers home the vibes of 1918 wonderfully. What Pearl functions as is two things. It's a prequel to X, and one that fills in a lot of questions and gaps left by the first movie, but it's also a character study, and it delves into Pearl's incredibly warped mind and helps us understand and empathize with her even if what she's doing is psychotically wrong. It fleshes out on existing themes from X and adds in new ones that I'm hoping will circle back around in the third film, and if they do and MaXXXine sticks the landing, this really will be one of the best horror trilogies in recent memory. It's wild. Like I said, the Wizard of Oz vibes go deeper than just like the technical stylings. There are a lot of visuals here that feel ripped from it, like Pearl riding the bike, and another bit with a scarecrow that is hilarious and disturbing and so weird. And it just showcases that this movie is as disturbing and tragic as this movie is. It is also very, very funny. Pearl's unpredictability, the way that the film plays off it, not only through the fun editing beats, but also through like excellent comedic delivery by a few characters, and the way that certain things will come out of Pearl's mouth, and then we'll hard cut to somebody's reaction, and it's just the most like, all right, well, I gotta go. But seriously, I mean, Pearl's whole thing is, I'm a star, everyone's gonna love me. Mia Goth is a star, everyone's gonna love her. The control that this woman has over her facial expressions is like nothing I've ever seen. There are several scenes where she'll shift on a dime and have you feeling so sorry for her 1 minute and then terrified of her the next. She's honestly channeling the spirit of Shelley Duvall here, and Shelley Duvall is alive. And it doesn't seem like Ti West had to, torture her to get that performance out of her. Just a little Kubrick roast for those of you who don't know how abusive he was to Shelley Duvall. Toward the climax of the movie, Pearl has this monologue that is 6.5, 7 minutes long. And the entire time, I didn't even realize it until about 3/4 of the way through, we do not cut away from one tight angle on Mia Goth's face the whole time, as she is just giving her all in this really gut-wrenchingly terrifying and tragic monologue. And we just watch all the different emotions go across her face as she unloads, and it is so powerful and so captivating, and give this woman all the awards, all the roles, cast Mia Goth in more stuff. This really is her film. I mean, not only does she have the co-writing credit, she carries this movie on her back as Pearl. There is so much she brings to this character, and she runs the gambit from like innocence, tragedy, humor, rage, lust, insanity. Pearl has held herself back from everything she has ever wanted because she's been conditioned to believe that this is all she deserves, and essentially is a sociopath living in a time where nothing was known about mental health. And the result is this sad, lonely, innocent girl who lashes out in very violent ways whenever she's facing rejection or perceived rejection. And just the way that Mia Goth channels that psychosis is electric. The whole cast is great here, but like, this is her film. And if you're not sold on that by the time the movie ends, the end credits will remind you of it, because wow, I don't want to spoil what I mean by that, but wow. Not only does Pearl expand on the murderous character that we met in X and show us how she ended up there and give us the intricacies of her mind, but it does so in a way that adds to the messages of X and sets up this thematic through line running through all three movies where there are so many parallels between Pearl and MaXXXine. And both of them, in addition to being about the absolute necessity for human connection, center on the ideas of stagnancy and learned helplessness and the notion that your life can only be what you choose to make it. It's as much of a metaphor for learning your own value and self-worth after years of abuse as it is for the dangers of letting other people's perceptions color your perception of yourself. It furthers those parallels between Pearl and MaXXXine wonderfully, and MaXXXine really is only different from Pearl because she took those active measures to get out of her oppressive situation. Pearl accepted the life she didn't feel she deserved. MaXXXine refused to. MaXXXine escaped the bonds of her oppressive religious upbringing and ran away to become a star. Pearl literally sees herself in MaXXXine because they're played by the same person. And I think that I hope that the third film will bring those through lines to their deserved conclusion, and given that the film is centered on the VHS porn boom of the 1980s, which was notably not stellar to its performers or to women in general, what I'm hoping is that we'll get a story of MaXXXine realizing that this is also not a life she feels she deserves and empowering herself to pull herself out of that yet again. I think I still ultimately prefer X as a film just because I'm always going to be partial to slasher films over anything else, but there's no denying that Pearl is a masterclass in genre filmmaking. It delivers on exactly what Goth and West were going for, and I think the only thing that would have made it perfect for me is if there was like a full musical number in it, because honestly, this movie deserved a full musical number. Mia Goth can dance, let her sing too. Pearl, great movie. Have you seen it? If you have, let me know your thoughts below. I really would love to talk with you guys about this movie and about X, and hopefully when MaXXXine comes out, just do a big podcast episode about all three, talking about it deeply. Yeah, thank you guys for watching. Talk about Pearl in the comments. Let me know what you thought. Like, comment, subscribe. Click the podcast link below. Season 2 starting soon. Looking forward to chatting with y'all. Hellraiser coming up in a couple weeks. Can't wait. Exciting stuff. I'll see y'all next time.